The kettle clicked off, and I poured hot water over the coffee grounds, watching the steam rise like smoke off a battlefield. My hands moved by habit, stir, wait, pour, while my mind wandered to the errands of the day. Bills. Groceries. Maybe finally fixing the shelf Marie kept reminding me about. The morning was still, too quiet. Our daughter's room was empty, she'd stayed over at her cousin's, and Marie was supposedly out for an early walk before her violin practice. I sat down, cupping the mug between both hands, savoring the metallic bite of the first sip. Then my phone buzzed on the oak kitchen table. A short, sharp vibration. No ringtone. Just enough to break the silence. I glanced over, an unknown number. No name. Just a gray bubble and an attached image file. I swiped it open, not thinking twice. And just like that, the bottom dropped out of my morning. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Marie stood in the music studio downtown, where she'd been taking lessons twice a week. Her expression was soft, vulnerable, tilted upward toward a man I immediately recognized, Lucas. Her violin mentor. The one she always said was brilliant but eccentric. But in this photo, he wasn't correcting her posture or showing her finger placement. His hand was on her waist. Her hand rested lightly on his chest. Their faces were too close, frozen in that aching moment just before a kiss, or just after. The mug clinked against the saucer as I set it down too hard. Coffee sloshed over the rim, pooling along the carved edge of the table. I stared at the image again. My pulse climbed into my throat. Lucas's body blocked out the wall mirror behind them, but I could still see part of their reflection, blurred and intimate, like something caught through frosted glass. A music stand stood nearby, the sheet music drooping, forgotten. The lights above them were dimmed to a warm amber, and for a second I felt like I was intruding on something sacred. Only it wasn't sacred. It was betrayal. The clock above the microwave ticked forward. The same time as always, same rhythm. But I heard it differently now. Too loud. Too measured. Like a conductor tapping his baton to silence the room before the truth is performed. No message came with the photo. No explanation. Just that one moment, caught and sent by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I flipped the phone over, screen down. I didn't speak. Didn't move. The silence pressed in. Outside the window, the San Jose morning began to stir, garbage trucks rumbling, birds scattered on power lines, the first hint of sunlight creeping across the neighbor's roof. I listened to the world continue like nothing had changed. But inside me, something had shifted. Or maybe it had broken. Quietly. I should have felt rage. I should have marched into that studio, demanded answers, shouted names. Instead, I inhaled slowly. I took another sip of cold coffee. I looked at the empty chair across from me, where Marie usually sat in her hoodie, hair still damp from the shower, making grocery lists on her phone. I had loved her long enough to memorize her patterns. And I had ignored enough small changes to recognize this moment for what it truly was. This wasn't a question anymore. It was an answer. I looked at the phone one last time before setting it beside my keys. There would be time for questions later. But not now. Now, there was only silence. And beneath it, something else. Not panic. Not fury. Just the faintest tremor of resolve. It's strange how clearly you can remember the good times when everything starts falling apart. The first time I met Marie, she was arguing with a bookstore cashier about a mispriced violin manual. She wasn't rude, just assertive, fiercely articulate, unwavering in her logic. I remember thinking she was the most alive person I'd ever seen. After she got her discount, she turned, caught me staring, and smirked. "What? You don't believe in justice?" she asked. I married her 3 years later. We built a quiet life in San Jose. Not flashy, not perfect, just ours. We had a daughter, Ellie, who brought color into every corner of the house. We cooked together, repainted rooms on whims, shared long walks on Sunday mornings with paper cups of coffee and no destination in mind. Every anniversary, Marie would play a short violin piece for me, Just the two of us in the living room, her notes echoing off the bookshelves like private vows. Looking back, there were no sudden breaks, just a series of quiet shifts. It started with the birthday gift. Marie had mentioned, almost wistfully, that she missed playing violin seriously, like she had in her conservatory years. I took it to heart and researched private instructors. Lucas came highly rated. He had studied abroad, taught at festivals, was known for his emotional intensity. She was thrilled. Said it made her feel herself again. At first, it was wonderful to see her lit up like that. She came home from lessons energized, humming scales while she chopped vegetables, her bow calluses returning like old friends. I was proud of her. Encouraged her. But then, subtle changes. Her perfume, for one. A floral musk I hadn't smelled on her since Ellie was born. She wore it on lesson days. Then came the late returns, sessions running long, rehearsals she claimed were inspiring and exhausting. I believed her, until one night she came back nearly an hour past midnight and avoided my eyes when she kissed my cheek. The phone habits shifted too. It was always face down. Notifications silenced. Once, I passed her the phone during dinner when it buzzed. She snatched it so quickly I almost laughed, until I saw the flicker of guilt in her expression. Just spam, she mumbled. I didn't accuse her. I didn't want to be that husband. I told myself I was imagining things. That she was just going through a phase. Artistic people, I reasoned, needed more space. But doubt has a way of lingering. One morning while she was in the shower, I noticed her laptop open on the kitchen island. I hesitated, then lifted the lid. The browser was still up. Her recent searches clutched at my gut. What is an emotional affair? How to tell if a teacher loves a student? Feeling torn between two people. I stared at the screen, not blinking. It didn't scream betrayal. But it whispered something worse, indecision. That night, she came home humming a piece I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, she said Lucas had composed it just for fun. Her eyes lingered on nothing in particular when she said his name. I started paying closer attention. A pattern formed. Thursday nights she stayed out late. Every other Saturday, she had extra practice. Her studio receipts didn't match the hours she claimed. I checked our joint bank account, noticed unexplained charges. Lyft rides from Lucas's address. Dinner tabs for two when she said she ate alone. I copied the statements. Printed them. Filed them into a drawer in my study. Still, I said nothing. Instead, I tried to find solid ground elsewhere. I reached out to Daniel, an old college friend who knew us both well. We met for coffee, and after a little small talk, I asked casually, "Do you think something's off with Marie lately?" He hesitated. His spoon stirred his coffee long after the sugar dissolved. "She talks about this violin guy a lot," he said finally. "Like, a lot." I didn't want to say anything, "Man, but you're not crazy." I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral. Inside, something shifted, a quiet confirmation I didn't want but somehow needed. The final nudge came from our daughter. One evening, while Marie was still out, Ellie, 7 years old and sharper than we gave her credit for, asked, "Why does mommy talk so quietly on the phone now?" She used to let me say hi. I didn't answer. Just kissed her forehead and told her to brush her teeth. That night, I lay in bed long after Marie returned, pretending to be asleep. I listened to her shower, counted the rhythm of the water droplets against the tub. I stared at the ceiling, feeling something slip beneath my ribs, like a thread being pulled loose from a tightly knit fabric. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger requires clarity, and I was still collecting pieces. Still trying to decide if what I suspected was real or just the echo of fear. But deep down, I already knew. There was a moment, a quiet, internal click, when I stopped grieving the marriage and started preparing for what came next. It wasn't cinematic. There was no dramatic music, no shattered plates, no midnight packing of bags. Just a long look in the mirror one morning as I buttoned my shirt and realized, I deserved better than silence. And if Marie had already chosen a new duet partner, then I owed it to myself, and to Ellie, to reclaim the melody of our lives. I didn't start with confrontation. I started with a lawyer. Under the pretense of updating our estate plan, I made an appointment with Sarah Brennan, a family attorney with a reputation for discretion and precision. Her office sat on the second floor of a quiet complex near downtown San Jose, the walls lined with degrees and framed pressings of dried flowers. "I'm not sure if I'm ready for divorce," I told her in our first meeting. "But I think I need to be ready, to be ready." She nodded without judgment. "Then let's prepare quietly. You don't need to make a decision today. You just need information and a foundation." That word stuck with me, foundation. We began with documentation. I gave her printouts of our finances, photos I'd taken of Marie's calendar entries that didn't line up with receipts, and a few screenshots I'd saved from her computer browser history. Sarah's assistant helped me notarize a temporary custody draft in case things escalated quickly. It felt strange to discuss my daughter like an asset, but it was necessary. Practical. Back home, I installed a simple camera in the hallway, tucked near the bookshelf, camouflaged behind a vase. I told myself it was for security. The truth? I needed to stop speculating and start knowing. Within 2 weeks, I had confirmation. One Thursday evening, Marie arrived home at 11:42 p.m., wearing a scarf I hadn't seen before and humming softly to herself. She didn't know the hallway camera caught her whispering into her phone, "No, I'm home now. I'll call you in the morning. Love you." It wasn't meant for me. I hadn't heard her say those words in months. I forwarded the footage to Sarah, who added it to our growing file. She reminded me that California is a no-fault divorce state, but character and conduct still hold weight when it comes to custody, especially if the child's emotional security is at stake. That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of heartbreak. Out of clarity. I called my older brother, Patrick, the next morning. He lived in Los Gatos and ran a small tech consultancy. We hadn't talked deeply in a while, but when I told him everything, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I'm proud of you. You're handling this like a surgeon, not a wrecking ball." That meant more than he probably realized. Patrick offered to connect me with a friend of his who specialized in digital forensics. I didn't want to hack anything, but I did want to ensure my records were secure. The last thing I needed was Marie deleting things before I could print or protect them. The friend, Helena, walked me through secure archiving tools. I backed up every message, every email thread, every appointment confirmation Marie had sent to my account. I made 3 copies, one in the cloud, one on a flash drive in my locked drawer at work, and one I gave to Sarah during our second consultation. By then, Marie had grown bolder. Lucas dropped her off once, and I caught a glimpse of them through the living room blinds, his hand brushing hers, too familiar. I didn't confront her. I just marked the date and time. Our interactions grew more distant. Marie smiled too hard during dinners. Overcompensated. Asked about Ellie's schoolwork more than usual. I could tell she sensed the shift, though she didn't know its origin. She was walking on a stage and hadn't realized the audience had changed. One night, while folding laundry, she casually mentioned that Lucas was thinking of applying to teach at the local college. I nodded. "Wouldn't that be great?" she said. "For someone, I'm sure it would be." She paused mid-fold, then continued like nothing had happened. I noted it all. Ellie, meanwhile, stayed blissfully unaware. I kept her routine as stable as possible: school drop-offs, bedtime stories, Friday night pizza. But I began tucking notes into her lunchbox, small reminders: "You are loved. You are safe. I'm always here." It made me feel like I was anchoring her in something true. The final piece came 2 weeks later. A mutual friend, Angela, from our community orchestra, sent me a message that simply read, "I didn't know how to say this earlier, but they weren't subtle at the last recital. If you ever need a witness, I'm here." Angela wasn't a gossip. She was principled, careful. Her message was the last confirmation I needed. I printed her message. Filed it. By then, Sarah had already drawn up the divorce petition. Custody, joint, with primary residence awarded to me due to Marie's instability and recent overnight absences. Property division, fair but firm. Spousal support, negotiable based on her recent employment lapse. I looked over the documents one quiet afternoon while Marie was out and Ellie napped on the couch. I read them twice. Then a third time. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about betrayal anymore. It was about truth. About control. About choosing clarity over chaos, structure over suffering. And soon, very soon, it would be time to bring that truth to light. The house was quiet, too quiet for a Saturday afternoon. Marie was sitting on the edge of the couch, scrolling aimlessly through her phone, her legs curled under her, a half-finished mug of tea on the side table. I had asked her earlier in the week if we could talk today, just the two of us. She'd nodded, distracted, assuming nothing serious. Ellie was spending the weekend with my sister. I'd made sure of that. I entered the living room with a manila folder in hand and set it down on the coffee table. Marie glanced up, noticed the folder, then looked at me, her smile twitching with hesitation. "What's this?" "A conversation," I said, lowering myself into the armchair opposite her. "And some things you should see." She didn't move, didn't touch the folder. Just watched me carefully, like someone waiting to see which way the wind would blow. "I know about you and Lucas," I said. My voice was level. No tremor. No drama. "I've known for a while." The words sat between us, still and heavy. Marie blinked. I don't, what are you talking about?" I didn't reply. Instead, I reached into the folder and pulled out a printed still frame from the hallway camera, her whispering into her phone, hand over her mouth, eyes lit with affection. I laid it down gently. Then came the lift receipts. The browser history. A copy of Angela's message. And finally, a document labeled, Draft Custody Proposal. She stared at the stack of paper like it was a flame licking at her fingertips. "You went through my things," she said, voice sharp. "No," I replied evenly. "I protected myself." That's what people do when the ground starts to shift under them. Her lips parted as if to argue, then closed again. "This doesn't have to get ugly," I continued. "I've already met with an attorney. These are preliminary documents. Nothing's been filed. Yet. But I wanted you to understand that I'm not in the dark anymore." She exhaled shakily, setting her phone down. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "I'm sure you didn't," I said. "But it did." Silence stretched. Then, her voice, quieter, I felt invisible. Like I was disappearing into motherhood, into routine. "Lucas made me feel seen again." I nodded once. "And in doing so, you made me disappear. You just didn't notice." She flinched at that. Her eyes watered but she didn't cry. I reached back into the folder and pulled out one last item, a framed photo I had kept in my office for years. It was from our 5th anniversary, Marie, Ellie, and I at the coast, hair whipping in the wind, all smiles. I set it on the table, face down. A symbol. A full stop. "This," I said, tapping the back of the frame, "used to mean something unbreakable. But I won't carry it like a weight anymore." She looked at the photo, then away, pressing her palms into her lap. "What happens now?" she whispered. I stood up slowly, folding the folder closed. "Now, we separate. Peacefully, if possible. Transparently, always. I've arranged for a mediator. We'll work through the rest there." I turned to leave the room, then paused at the doorway. "For what it's worth," I said, without turning back, "I hope you find whatever it was you needed so badly. I just wish you hadn't had to lose this to get it." The clock in the kitchen ticked once. Twice. The sound filled the space between us, measured, certain. Then I walked away. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. It was clean, by legal standards. The mediator said we were refreshingly civil. Marie and I signed the custody agreement without fighting. Ellie would live primarily with me, with alternating weekends and a flexible holiday schedule. Marie didn't contest the settlement. She barely spoke during the last meeting. When she did, her voice was brittle, as if every word scraped the inside of her throat. Lucas didn't show up. Not that I expected him to. There were moments, after all the papers were signed and the moving boxes stacked, when I sat in the empty house and waited for the grief to hit like a wave. But it never did. It came more like a tide, quiet, persistent, receding slowly with each passing day. Ellie adjusted quickly. Children are strange that way, they adapt to change better than we give them credit for, especially when the adults around them are calm. I stayed calm. I made her lunch every morning, walked her to school, helped with homework, listened to her talk about books and best friends and what animals dream about. Marie called often at first. I kept the conversations about Ellie. No anger, no bitterness, just boundaries. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Willow Glen. It wasn't fancy, but it had light. Morning sun poured through the windows like hope. I set up a desk by the balcony where I could read, write, think. I found an old guitar in storage and started playing again. My fingers were stiff at first, but the calluses came back with time. Some evenings, when Ellie was at Marie's, I'd make dinner and eat alone, not in sadness but in peace. There's a kind of strength in solitude when you choose it. I lit candles. I played jazz. I began journaling, not about the pain, but about the path through it. I wanted to remember how I'd gotten here, not to dwell, but to record. To map it. Eventually, I turned those journal entries into something more. A blog. Anonymous at first. I called it Duet of Silence. Each post told a small story, of catching my breath in a lawyer's office, of hearing my daughter laugh on a day I thought would break me, of watching a marriage fall apart and not falling with it. I didn't give names. I didn't seek pity. I just told the truth. Surprisingly, people started writing back. Some were men, some women, people betrayed, people healing, people unsure how to take the first step. They thanked me for the clarity. For the calm. I never expected to become a voice for others. But maybe that's what healing is, building something for someone else to stand on when the floor gives out. The wedding photo sits in a box in my closet now. I didn't throw it away. I'm not angry with the man I was back then. He loved fully. He tried. He gave everything. Now, I give to myself. And to Ellie. One night, as I tucked her in, she looked up at me and asked, "Daddy, are you happy again?" I smiled, brushed her hair back from her face. "Not yet," I said. "But I'm getting there." Outside, the wind played softly through the trees. Inside, the clock on my dresser ticked its steady rhythm, no longer a countdown, no longer a wait. Just time. Moving forward.